When a new series spins off from a successful show, it has a unique advantage. It can learn from what worked and what didn't. That's exactly the opportunity facing Sheriff Country as it enters its first season. While its parent series, Fire Country, built a passionate fan base with intense action and emotional storytelling, one area that has occasionally divided viewers is the show's romantic storylines. If Sheriff Country wants to stand out while still honoring the shared universe, avoiding some of those romantic pitfalls could be one of the smartest moves it makes. One of the biggest challenges Fire Country has faced is how often romance becomes tangled with the central plot. The show's core premise is already packed with high-stakes firefighting missions, redemption arcs, and community drama. Yet at times, the romantic relationships begin to overshadow those elements. Instead of supporting the story, the love triangles and emotional conflicts can sometimes slow down the pacing or shift attention away from the life-or-death stakes that make the show compelling in the first place. For Sheriff Country, the solution doesn't have to be eliminating romance altogether. Relationships are a natural part of storytelling, especially in a small-town setting where personal and professional lives constantly overlap. However, the key difference should be balance. Romance should complement the narrative rather than dominate it. If the series keeps its focus primarily on law enforcement, community dynamics, and character growth, romantic elements will feel more authentic instead of forced. Another lesson Sheriff Country can learn from Fire Country involves relationship stability. One of the recurring criticisms of Fire Country is that certain relationships seem to cycle through the same emotional conflicts over and over again. Breakups, reunions, misunderstandings, and dramatic confrontations sometimes repeat in ways that make the romance feel less meaningful over time. For a first-season show like Sheriff Country, avoiding that pattern could make its characters feel more grounded. Instead of constant relationship turmoil, the series could focus on slow-burn connections that develop naturally. When relationships grow gradually over time, audiences become more invested because the emotional payoff feels earned. This approach would also allow the show to maintain its momentum without getting stuck in repetitive romantic drama. Another important factor is character independence. Fire Country occasionally struggles with moments where romantic storylines define characters more than their personal motivations or professional goals. In contrast, Sheriff Country has the opportunity to establish its characters as fully realized individuals first, before placing them into romantic dynamics. For example, a sheriff's deputy or investigator should primarily be defined by their work, their sense of duty, and their role in the community. If romance develops, it should emerge from those qualities rather than replacing them. This kind of storytelling not only strengthens the characters, but also keeps the show's identity firmly rooted in its law enforcement premise. The tone of the series also plays a role in how romance is perceived. Fire Country blends intense action with emotional drama, which sometimes makes its romantic storylines feel heightened or melodramatic. Sheriff Country could benefit from a slightly more grounded tone, where relationships feel like a natural extension of everyday life rather than constant sources of explosive conflict. That doesn't mean the show should avoid emotional stakes. In fact, strong relationships can deepen the impact of dramatic moments. But when romance is treated with subtlety and patience, those moments become more powerful because they feel genuine rather than exaggerated. There's also the question of audience expectations. Fans who tune in to Sheriff Country will likely be looking for something familiar yet fresh within the shared universe. Delivering compelling investigations, tense confrontations, and strong community storytelling will be essential. If romantic subplots remain secondary to those elements, viewers are more likely to feel that the series has its own identity rather than simply repeating the formula of Fire Country. Another advantage of keeping romance in check is narrative flexibility. When a show relies too heavily on relationship drama, it can become difficult to introduce new storylines without disrupting existing dynamics. By maintaining a balanced approach, Sheriff Country can explore a wider range of plots, from criminal investigations to regional emergencies, without constantly returning to the same romantic conflicts. Ultimately, Sheriff Country has a chance to refine the formula that Fire Country established. The shared universe already gives the show a strong foundation, but the way it handles character relationships could determine how distinct it feels. If the series focuses on strong character development, meaningful community ties, and professional stakes first, any romance that emerges will feel like a natural part of the story rather than the driving force behind it. And by learning from the romantic missteps that occasionally challenged Fire Country, Sheriff Country can build relationships that feel authentic, compelling, and far more satisfying for viewers in the long run.